In this video, we're going to cover the Getting Started guide with smartImager. We're also going to be able to image a computer when we're done. But there are a few things you're going to need before you start. You're going to need to make sure that smartImager is installed on your server. You're also going to need to make sure that you have a valid copy of Windows, whether that's the ISO file from your EA agreement or volume license agreement, or any other copy of Windows. Just make sure you have the rights to use that for imaging. You're also going to need a physical computer that you can image. You're going to need to know the model and the type and what operating system and architecture you want to image that computer with. Lastly, you may need to grab an application or two that you want to add to your image. Make sure it's in a format that's easily installable without user interaction. So whether that's an MSI file or if it's an executable, that you know the switches to use in order to make that silent. Or if perhaps you've wrapped it up in a script or whatever, you know that it installs silently without human interaction. All right, let's go ahead and get started. And what we're going to do is we're going to start at our console on our server. So I've remoted into my server here, and you'll notice at the install of smartImager, it gives you a little icon here that opens up a browser. Now, the very first time you open smartImager, it will take a few seconds to open, especially if you're running it on a server. But when it does open, you'll notice that you get the Getting Started guide. And basically, this is a set of instructions that you can go through, and it tells you how to use those portions of smartImager. Now, each individual who first logs into smartImager is going to be presented with the Getting Started guide. It's a good idea to have them read through the instructions. For now, we're going to click to the bottom where it says Summary and click Got It. smartImager at this point will mark that as being completed by the user that's logged in. And now we need to do some things that we only need to do once, and that's the quick setup through the publishing section. So for the quick setup, all we really need to do is click the quick setup button. In the background, smartImager is going to add a few defaults for us, like a default application, a default naming type, that kind of thing. Now we need to do the driver capture. There's three ways we can do driver captures. We can capture locally from any machine. We can reach out to any machine on our network and grab the drivers that way. Or we can do the most popular one, which is just grab a vendor driver pack and have smartImager consume those drivers so we can use them. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the driver capture button, and under new capture we're going to choose vendor pack import. In other videos I do cover how to use the other type of driver captures, both the local and the remote, but for this video we're going to stick with the vendor driver capture, and we're going to choose our manufacturer. There's three you can choose from: Dell, HP, and Lenovo. If you choose one of them and choose the link to your right, it'll bring you to the manufacturer's homepage to where you can download any of the drivers that you need. So in this case, I've chosen Dell, and you'll notice that if I scroll down through here, that it will allow me to choose a driver that I need, depending on the operating system that I'm using. Now, there is a certain place you do want to save those. And in my case, I've saved them under Program Files, Circs, smartImager, Repositories, Uploads. Anytime you're grabbing driver packs, this is a great place to store your driver packs. And you'll notice that I've actually grabbed a few different models, an HP model, a Lenovo model, as well as a Dell model. And I'm going to use each one of those models. For now, I'm going to stick with the Dell. And I need to enter the exact model it is. So in this case, it's a Latitude E6430. And then I need to choose the operating system and architecture I want to use. And then I need to tell smartImager where that vendor file is. So in this case, my vendor file for Windows 10 for the E6430 is here. You'll notice that it brought me directly to my Uploads folder. That's why I want to save everything to that directory. And I'll go ahead and click OK. Now I'm going to move back to model just for a second. If you don't know how the BIOS for that machine registers the model type, you need to run a WMI query on that model. So just open a command prompt and type in WMIC computer system get model, and it'll tell you exactly how that model is registered in the BIOS. How it comes back to you and what it says when you type in that command is exactly how you need to type it into the model. Lenovo's are going to be a little bit different. You're going to think, oh, well, I have, this ThinkPad model. Lenovo doesn't actually put the ThinkPad type into, or the Carbon type or any other type into the model field in the BIOS. So it's really important that you run this command on the physical computer so you know exactly what to type in for the model as well. Under most circumstances, I will just leave the default for what it says for driver pack. In this case, it's going to say, I want to create a new driver pack. And after I've filled in everything and I know it's correct, I'm going to just choose to start the import. At this point, what smartImager is going to do is it's going to consume those files and create a driver pack for me. At any time, I can click refresh to make sure that it's not completed already, but it generally will refresh about every 20 seconds. When your driver capture is done, just click back on the smartImager logo, and this should only take between 2 minutes and 10 minutes. If it takes longer than 10 minutes, you may need to click refresh. It'll say, oh, I've imported 28 out of 29 drivers. It means the 29th driver can't be imported because it's probably a software driver and not related to hardware. So if you get that, it's okay. Just go back to clicking the smartImager logo. It'll tell you that your driver pack is complete and we can go on to the next session. So go ahead and click pause here. And when you get back to the Getting Started guide, that's where we'll meet next. Now that we've completed our driver capture, we're ready to move on to add the Windows image. To do so, let's go ahead and go back to our console. And at our console, we're now at step 4. And really all we need to do is add a Windows image in the WIM file format. Now, if you don't have a Windows image in the WIM file format, as long as you have a Windows ISO, you can get it from there. To show you this, I have a few ISOs here, and I'm going to grab any one of them. I'm going to right-click it and choose Mount. It'll take a second to go ahead and mount that image, and if I look in Sources, I will find, under the Eyes, a file called install.wim. That's the only file I need. That, in essence, is the entire Windows image. So copy that, and where you'll want to copy that is back to your Program Files, Circs, smartImager, repositories, but instead of placing it in the uploads, place it in the images directory and rename it according to a name that makes sense to you. So in this case, I've named mine Windows 10, the type, and then the architecture. So once you've copied it out of the ISO and placed it in the images directory, you can then browse for it here by clicking the Browse button, and this will take you right to the repositories images directory, and you can choose it from there. Additionally, if you have your own custom WIM, you can also choose to use your own custom WIM. Again, it must be in the WIM file format, and you'll need to know the index of that custom WIM. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose one of our Windows files, and then we'll click OK. And then from here, we're going to tell smartImager what the architecture is. So we're going to say that it's a Windows 10 64-bit because that's the WIM image I chose, and we're going to click Add Image. This will take a few seconds for smartImager to copy that WIM file and make sure it associates an unattend file with it. And that's really the last step we have to do. After we've added our image file, we can go ahead and click Publish, and this should take about 5 to 10 minutes. In the background, what smartImager is doing is it's copying the files it needs to go to the respective repositories. It's also placing everything within a deployment directory ready for you to deploy that. It'll bring you to the system activity and activity screen rather, and it'll tell you what it's doing. So in this case, it's compiling my driver pack for me. It'll also create my WinPE boot files for me. It'll go ahead and connect with WDS and make sure that the boot files are in WDS. Once it's totally complete, You'll get a checkbox in the top right side of your screen where it says Publish, letting you know that everything is good to go. And so why don't we go ahead and push pause here, and then when we start up again, we're going to add an application to our image, and then we're going to go ahead and image a computer. At this point, we've added an image, we've added drivers, and we've published. So hopefully you're at the point where smartImager has completed its publishing, and so let's go ahead and go to the console, and we can see we're brought to the main page. But if you've just completed publishing, you're probably still on the system activity page. You're looking for a checkbox that says Finish successfully. Once you get that, you can either click the smartImager logo, or you can go Console and then Dashboard. Both will bring you to the same place. You'll notice now that you have a publish at the top right side. This will shake periodically if you make changes in the console, and to let you know that, hey, you need to publish because your changes, even though you've saved them, aren't available in your environment yet. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to add an application, and so we can distribute that application along with our image. To do so, what we need to do is we need to go to Components and then Applications. And you'll notice that smartImager created an application for us already, and basically it's just a registry key that, places in some things about branding, like when it was imaged and that kind of thing. You can change this. This is really just a placeholder for you. Before we get into creating an application, I want to show you where you should save those applications. If we open up our file directory on our server, you'll notice that under Repositories, you'll have a folder named Applications. Go ahead and save all of your applications in their own unique folder inside of the Applications directory. Now, it's important that each application is in its own unique folder. And the reason is because when smartImager delivers the application to the client machine, it will deliver it to the C apps and then the name of the folder under your applications directory. So if I was going to distribute 7-zip, for instance, on the client machine, that would be placed in C apps 7-zip. All right, so I've included a few applications here under my applications repository. And so I'm going to come back to my console under Applications, and I'm going to click Create. Here I'm going to be asked a few things. One is going to be the name, and so I will name it 7-zip, and I'll tell it what architecture it's for. And I'll click Create. Now I need to tell it where the application is located and how to install it. So as under the folder path, all I need to do is click Browse, and it'll take me directly to that Applications directory. And then I choose the 7-zip folder that I made, and I'll click OK. Now it'll ask me how to install it. It needs to install silently because when you're imaging a computer, you don't want to have a user have to answer any information about an application. So under Install command, we'll click Browse there. And in this case, it's an MSI file. So smartImager will know automatically how to install an MSI file silently for you, and it'll write in the correct parameters. But let's say it's not an MSI file. If it's an executable, you need to know exactly which switches make that silent, or if it's script, you need to make sure that it doesn't require user interaction. If you ever wonder how to install an application silently, just open up your favorite search engine and search. Just put the name of the application and then silent install, and you'll get a bunch of returns on how to install that silently. So in this case, we've chosen where the application is and how to install it silently. The rest are really if I want to retry the application if it fails, if I want to delete the application off the client once I've installed it. I'll leave everything for its default, and I'll click Save. But I do want to change one small item, and that is under compatibility. I've added 7-zip, and this is a 64-bit application, so I want to make sure that it's only installed on 64-bit machines. So I'm going to choose compatibility, and then I'm going to choose 64-bit operating system. This way, if it's not running a version of Windows that's 64-bit, it won't install 7-zip for me. I can do the same thing by cloning 7-zip here, because I have the 32-bit installer as well, and I'll just name this x32. It's going to be in the same directory. It's going to be in that 7-zip directory, but I'm going to choose a different file for it. I'm going to choose this file, which is the 32-bit install. So I'll select it and click OK. And now I'll click Save. And so now I have a 32-bit and a 64-bit version. And for the compatibility here, I'm going to choose 32-bit operating system, and I'm going to uncheck 64 for it. And now I have a 32-bit version of 7-zip that'll only install on 32-bit OSs, and a 64-bit 7-zip that'll only install on 64-bit machines. I'm going to go through a few more applications just so you get the hang of it. I'm going to click Create, and I'm going to install Notepad++ here. And in this case, I know that Notepad++ is an executable. So first I'm going to select the folder where Notepad++ resides, and that's going to be in the Notepad++ folder, and then I'll click OK. And secondly, I'm going to say how to install it. And when I browse here, you'll notice that I have executables. So I'm going to select one of those executables. And in this case, I already searched on how to install this silently. And according to their website, if I do a /S, that'll install silently for me. Again, I chose a 64-bit version of that, so I'm going to choose a 64-bit operating system and click Save. Compatibilities are very powerful. They let you assign and install applications or any other component based upon whether or not they're compatible. So in this case, I've said, if it's not a 64-bit operating system running on the client, don't install this application. If you don't choose a compatibility, it will always be installed. In other words, it will always be the default. A couple other here I'll go through with you is like a script and how you would install a custom script. So I'll just name this script just to show you the different types of scripts. Under the folder, I'm still going to say where that script is located. So I'm going to choose Configuration and choose OK. And you'll notice that as I choose different types of scripts, smartImager will choose those accordingly. So in here, I'm going to choose a VBS file or a Visual Basic Script file, and you'll notice that it'll write out the C script for me. But if I change that to, let's say, a batch file and click OK, it'll just call it natively, just like you would through a command line or prompt. If I change this to a PowerShell file and I select the PS1 here and click OK, then smartImager will call PowerShell with an unrestricted execution policy, so it'll install silently for me. So depending on what you're actually calling, smartImager will change the command line for you, but I can always edit this and I could add or subtract from any text in here. I don't actually have to keep the default of what smartImager says. Additionally, I don't necessarily need a folder path. If I wanted to install a command directly, I could just add it correctly. So I could go like a tzutil switch S and then Central Standard Time. And if I just ran that command natively, it would assign my client computer, it would assign it to the Central Standard Time Zone. So there's a lot of different ways I can add applications. And in this case, I'm going to delete my script because I don't actually want it. It's going to say, wait a second, you made some changes. Are you sure you want to leave this page? And I'm going to say, yes, I want to leave that page because I didn't save anything there. And then it's going to let me know if it's safe to delete or not. Now, I've added 3 applications, but just because I've added those doesn't mean they're available. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Application Packs. I'm going to choose my default application pack or make a new one. And under the application pack, I'm going to choose applications, and then I can add those applications that I created earlier. So in this case, I'll go ahead and add the 3 of them. And I can also arrange and change the order of those if I want. For instance, if I wanted to put Notepad after the branding, I can do that. I'll go ahead and click Save. And you'll notice now that my publish bell is now ringing. And the reason it is because I've changed a few things. I've changed application packs and I've changed configuration data. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to publish any changes. And smartImager is going to wrap up this application pack for me and make it available for my distribution. Now, if I created a new application pack, I need to go to deployments, and I need to make sure that that application pack is available in my environment. So I'll go to the Applications tab, and I'll make sure that it's turned on for that application pack. Your deployments are what is available in your environment, and I highly suggest you watch the video that is directly related to deployments. At this point, my publishing has now completed, so I'm ready to image a computer. So I'm going to click my smartImager logo. That'll bring me back to my dashboard, and now we're ready to image a computer. So now we're ready to image a computer, and there's 1,000 different ways I can do it. First, I need to go to my dashboard, and I can do that by clicking the smartImager logo or clicking console and then dashboard. Both will take me to the same place. Now that we're done with our server side items, we've added everything we need to. There's really no reason for us to be remoted into the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to minimize that, and I'm going to open smartImager from my workstation. Running smartImager from your workstation browser is actually going to run faster due to the way that IIS works on a server. So, and I still have every available option I do with my workstation that I would with my server. So, from here at the smartImager console, I can type in an IP address, and if I do that, I have to do it fairly quickly. And the reason is this page is going to refresh often. And the reason it's going to refresh often is because of your deployment history. It wants to give you real-time data on what systems are being deployed at the moment. You'll notice that the IP address of the machine that I put in is already turned on. If I click the button next to it, it'll either be red or brown or green. And if I click next to it, it will actually refresh that line and let me know if that system is online or offline. From here, I can go ahead and push play, and this will force that machine to image. Another way I can image a computer is I can choose console and then bootstrap settings. And from my bootstrap settings, I have a media creator. And from here, I can click this and download a little executable that'll make a USB key for me if I wanted to image via USB key. Another way is I can manually boot the computer and boot it up into Pixie. And from there, I can press F12, and then that system will then start imaging via smartImager. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click play just to show you what happens here if I forcefully push an image. And it's going to ask me for my credentials. And I must be an administrator on that machine in order to force it to image. If I'm not an administrator, it'll deny me, and it'll put a little key mark here next to the action letting me know that, oh, you don't have the rights to actually push an image. The reason it asks you for your credentials is, keep in mind, you're pushing a machine that a user may be on at the time, so it wants to double check and make sure, are you sure you want to image this machine? What's going to happen on the client machine is the machine is actually going to reboot. It's going to boot automatically to Pixie. Now, if you haven't established and set up Pixie in your environment yet and made sure that it works, I wouldn't actually do this, because it will render the client machine unable to boot without Pixie, because it'll render that client machine so it only boots via the network. All right, from here, that's it as far as getting started. We're now to the point where we're imaging a computer. That client computer is now going to reformat, place Windows 10 on there like I told it to. It's going to put the right drivers on it, and then it will install the applications that I chose as well. At any time, if you have any questions, just shoot us an email at contactus@smartimager.com, or if you need any support, just email us at support@smartimager.com.